Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. That was crazy. Judging on the comments, this crazy guy probably knew the cops, but yeah, still insane. We'll tell you more right after a short pause. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Idiot shoplifter calls the cops and gets himself arrested. This happened about a week ago. It gave me a good chuckle, and I'm sure it'll give some of you one too. I work at a liquor store, so you can imagine we get our fair share of rowdy customers. This guy comes in, stuffs a bottle of Jack down his pants, and tries to walk out of the store. Security stops him, the guy gets aggressive and takes a swing at the guard. Guard defends himself, and they scrap for a few seconds, with the guard ending it by shoving the guy out of the store hard. The guy then starts mouthing off at the guard on how he just committed assault and that he'll call the cops and get him fired. Security guard tells him to go ahead, and the idiot actually does. Cops take about 5 minutes to get here. While we wait, the guy's still standing at the door yelling at the guard about how he'll F him up, step outside, etc. Cops turn up, situation gets explained. They take a few minutes to check the CCTV footage, then cuff the guy and drive him away. It was a pretty bizarre encounter. Guy was probably effed up on something. And our second story. The queen who lives upstairs. Where to begin with the entitled woman who lives upstairs? There's so many stories. I've lived in my current flat for nearly 7 years. When I first moved in upstairs, seemed nice. Closest in age to myself is the youngest in my block. I was 25, she was 28 when I first moved in. First thing to be said about her, she'll tell you till the cows come home that she's a good neighbor, looks out for everyone, blah, blah, blah. Within a week or so, I'd hit my patience limit with the 1,000th time she slammed her door at stupid o'clock at night. Went to ask her not to, got told it's not her fault, our internal doors are fire doors so they close themselves. I can't expect her to stop the door slamming every time. So for a couple of days, I let my door slam all the time and she called the landlord on me. Roll forward to my first winter here. Knock on the door first cold night to demand I turn my heating on. I'm middle flat of mine, so my flat's always warm, being covered on all sides. I refuse, as at this point I still had all my windows open due to the warmth in my flat. She had a full-on meltdown about how she's disabled. Only way she's disabled is that she's never been told no, and I have to turn my heating on so she doesn't have to waste her benefit money on heating. She tried calling housing and getting other people in the flats to agree I was doing bad by her and to turn my heating on. They all took my side on the issue. This has led to 7 winters of me putting on a jumper and snuggling under the blanket instead of turning the heating on the odd occasion my flat gets cold. She saved me money as my gas bills are only a couple of quid dearer in winter than in summer due to now only having heating on when having it washed so she doesn't get to enjoy my heat. She sounds terrible. I'm so proud that you stood up for yourself instead of letting her whine and get what she wanted. And our next story. Want to use our lawn after calling code enforcement? Okay, let's play. Our neighbors in front hate us for using the public street parking. Cue our new neighbors to the left. Recent additions to our block. They seemed like nice people with 3 kids and 1 dog. We keep to ourselves besides parking on the street to allow our elderly parents room in the driveway to visit. Well, that chaps our neighbors in the front. They have 8 cars for 4 adults who live there. They told, yes, I said told us to use our driveway and empty garage. Meanwhile, they expect the street. We'd used both the driveway spots, but after a few spats with my wife this past year. Starting January 1st, we now park on the street whenever we can. Well, they call 911 on us. No joke. Even the cop was baffled. Well, back to the neighbors in question. On the left, they're now naturally best friends with across the street a-holes, so they told us to cut our tree. We declined. It was not out of compliance for our area. When they didn't stick, they called code enforcement to cut our lawn. Again, not out of compliance. They wanted it short so their kids could continue to play on both sides. However, that one did annoy us. So my wife and I decided in one day to rip out the entire lawn on the property line and put rocks and a red brick barrier. Just so happened that their in-laws were visiting that day to see said adjustment. At that time, left neighbor who hates us, I guess to save face, asked us if we needed a tool, even though we're almost done. I just gave him a disgusted face and said, no, while walking away. My wife chuckled. She saw him look embarrassed afterwards. Then their kids came over and started to play on the rocks in New Barrier. Left neighbor said, don't go over there. They don't like kids. We have a kid, and I'm a teacher. My wife said, we just don't like your kids. Maybe if you watch them more. They scamper away. The next weekend, we put in 3 rose bushes. Then I got 1 long phallic-looking cactus and planted 2 white fuzzy ball-like cactuses on either side. Natural barbed wire fence. That was back in February or March. So fast forward to this past Monday, we put in a new security camera and found that left neighbor actually thought our yard was their yard. She said while looking at our property line, their yard's like half of ours. Turns out the optical illusion of their yard being big was just that. And our last story. Won a lawsuit against a guy who tried to force me out of business because I broke his local monopoly. I'm 26 years old and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I'm from a small town, 1,000 people, in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with someone. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city, 30-ish minutes away, small city, 8,000 people. When we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and saw how insane the prices were. For a 6-pack of local beer, we were charged $15. I was thinking about this and figured that I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my crappy job and thinking out loud how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be the president of the local bank. He told me, hey, with the pandemic, the bank's been struggling to find customers to give out loans. Right now, the bank's giving loans for cheap. A couple of weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea with the research I'd done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. I got the loan at a fantastic interest rate. I bought a building, which happened to be the former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad's a general contractor and gave me an excellent quote on materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper licenses, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I'd started taking out ads in the local newspaper advertising my store and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributors, I learned even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in the city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner and he suggested that I have around a 35 to 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and small local stores nearby. My hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, the week before Memorial Weekend, after opening, I'd made a $4,000 profit. It was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, oh, I'm sorry, you can do your business elsewhere. If someone tells my girlfriend to go back to China, use CB, they can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Time to grab my keys, not car keys, the store keys. My apartment's like 2 blocks away, and go to the store. That's not to say it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially that my only employee was my girlfriend and we were both working 6 or 7 10 to 12-hour days a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier. But it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a jerk. Couple weeks after Memorial Day, some old guy walks into my store a couple of minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not going to say the amount, but it wouldn't have even covered my principal on the loan. I rejected the proposal outright and refused to negotiate the sum higher. He walked out of my store saying, well, you'll be sorry you rejected that offer. The next month, the guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I never heard of for libel. After he left, I was freaking out and I decided that I was going to close early. When I got home, I Googled the guy and saw a picture of the guy that tried to buy my store. It turns out he's the guy who owns both of the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just so happens that he's on the city council. With a little bit of further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol. Later, I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board which approves liquor licenses. I love small-town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state. I decided to call him and try to get some legal advice. I talked to him and read the documents that I'd been handed/served over the phone and the research I'd done. After receiving all the information I'd read off, I was expecting to get some sort of advice, but instead heard, hang on, I gotta make a call. Later, my uncle called back. Hey OP, I just got off the phone with my partner. He agreed that we can take your case pro bono. If you'd like to accept, we can discuss it at my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. This is how I learned that my uncle's on the bar in 3 states. So we meet and we discuss the case. It turns out the guy filed the libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspapers. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but Uncle assured me that we'd win this case no problem. 3 weeks later, the case is dismissed, but after my uncle says people like that piece of work will likely try to file another suit against you. If that happens, call me and I promise I'll help. The next day I get served again, but this time I'm the defendant, not my store, me. I swear to God, I look at the documentation and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name, mine is listed as the defendant. Same thing happens. 4 weeks later, the case is dismissed. Over the next 3 months, I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case's hearing, we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, the guy suing me, his lawyer, a bailiff, and I were sitting in this room. Judge says, you two have been in court 4 times already. Is there any way we could come to an agreement that'll stop this cycle of faulty litigation? The guy's lawyer says they have an offer and hand it to my uncle, who then hands it to me. It essentially read that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of remaining loan principal. I outright reject the offer and make a counteroffer. I said, if you drop this case, I won't sue your butt for harassment. He busts out laughing. Sue me? With what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy that I chose to extend this offer and not sue your butt into bankruptcy and buy that crap hole from the bank when they foreclose on your dumb butt. The judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud about the real reason I was getting sued. My uncle straight out said to him, oh, I'm sorry. Apparently you were never told. I've taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he's spent on your litigations is gas. And bluntly, sir, I think your outburst has just ensured a suit against you. After that, we just left, and I was then informed a few days later the litigation was dropped. Right now, my uncle and I are talking about the future suit against the guy. I want to sue the guy for a very high amount to try and get press attention on this guy and his sketchy actions. Although my uncle warned me that we need to be careful because if we set the damages too high, it'll look like we're just being vindictive. This suit won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free essentially, I'm not going to complain. Looking back on this, I'm so thankful that my friends and family supported the entire way, especially my uncle. Without my uncle, I would have absolutely lost my business. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.